Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Ink with me, Matt Valdez. And today, I'm still on the road. I am working out of Dallas Tattoo and Arts Company in downtown Dallas, Texas. So, I love it here. It's a great town, great people. And speaking of great people, I have with today a special guest by the name of Mara Pitcher. Say hello.
Hi, everybody.
Today we are going to kind of do a second pass on this multicolored tree that has a lot of special significance, why we did it, and then eventually we went and started talking about all kinds of things, and it just blossomed. Like everything just came to light, and yeah, we got to know each other pretty well. I think it was funny that when we first started talking, you were kind of a little bit standoffish, if you will, if that's a good way of saying it.
A little more reserved.
A little more reserved.
A little more shy.
Kind of like, is this guy for real?
Yeah. Yeah. No, our first session, you were super great, but I was like, he was asking questions about, the story behind the tattoo, about me, and, I was like, well, is he just being polite, or does he really want to hear this? So, after our session, I got to see Beyond the Ink and see that, Matt's the real deal. And
this is just me. I'm crazy. This is just what I do.
And then I threw a whole lot of jazz his way and was very pleased when he responded and said, that's cool. And so I'm back, and I'm excited to be here.
By jazz, she meant, she sent me a 4-page handwritten letter. And I thought, holy crap, like the significance of a handwritten letter on top of, how many pages was the other?
And then there was like a six-page typed.
Basically talking about your story. Like,
yeah, definitely a very deep backstory.
Yeah, very, very deep backstory. It blew me away, really. And I have to say, just get it out in the forefront. I was having doubts. I had a lot of, at the time, when we were doing Beyond the Ink, and it was it's still in its infant stage, don't get me wrong. But I was having issues of, I don't want to say confidence issues or anything else like that, but I wanted to pull the plug. No joke. I wanted to pull the plug on Beyond the Ink. I wanted to say, well, I gave it a shot, but in my frustration and in my anger, if you will, I was kind of like, yeah, I put a lot of money into it. Yeah, something that I wanted to do. And I just needed something. Like, I was just like, you know what? Screw this. I tried, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's done. But then I literally got frustrated, walked my ass over to my mailbox, and that's when your letter, or package, I should say, because it had like handwritten letter. It had a 8x10 picture of something that you had actually taken a picture of the tree with the monkey wrenches, and that was pretty damn cool, pretty much because you took it yourself. That was your own.
My art.
Your art.
Yeah. I can't draw. Matt's in charge of all the drawing.
I'm in charge of the drawing.
But
you're in charge of the photography. That was really cool. And then, but the letter is what did it. And I know a lot of people have heard this story because I've told them this story about Mara and her story and why it meant so much. Because on that day, that specific day, I was just like I'm not doing this anymore. Like, whatever. Nobody really gives a rat's ass. That was my professional assessment of what I was doing. And then I read your letter, and it had talked specifically about how Beyond the Ink was like helping you, like overcome a few things, which we'll get into. And that's something that I had said before, with Beyond the Ink. If it helps just one person, which is, again, why I say share, subscribe, do all that good stuff, because you might be able to help one person. Well, Mara lives in Texas, and she specifically referenced one of the episodes with Keith. And to me, I was like, okay, that's a sign. Like, if that's not a sign, I don't know what is. So I put my pride away, did all that bullshit, and said, hey, Beyond the Ink, we're still going to do it. So thank you specifically, because honestly, without that letter and without that affirmation, I would have said, done. And it's not like me to want to quit something like that, but, that I'm very passionate about. But I honestly have to give credit where credit's due, because I do have a really cool bunch of people that are supportive, that love Beyond the Ink, but then I have some that are not, and it's frustrating. And so it's like, it's easy to listen to the negative and to fall on that negative, the comments, and people, it's not going to do anything. You're not going to go anywhere, or whatever. So, yeah, I think that was that. Honestly, I do thank you. It was that extra push.
Well, I was just glad to get a response at all, because I was terrified. I almost didn't mail the letter at all, because I thought, oh my God, I'm going to dump this crazy manifesto on this guy that barely knows me, and he's going to be like, wow, so she's got a whole lot going on. But, I'm kind of at a place on a self-healing journey, and I told myself last year, that in my own mind, I needed to focus on gratitude, and I needed to focus on the positivity that I had in my own life. And I had such an amazing experience with you on the first pass of this tree. It went 100 times better than I could have ever imagined. I had a great time. And I thought, and then I went home and I saw the first few episodes of Beyond the Ink. And to the early Beyond the Inkers out there, I'm honored, humbled to be following in your footsteps, because it was a really powerful thing, to hear other people and what getting tattooed meant to them, and how it integrated into their own kind of journey of self-healing and self-discovery, because it's more than just ink on skin for, I think, a lot of us, and I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here. I mean, just when we talked about it, we were talking, the first part of why you got this tree, I thought was like fantastic, because it's not just any tree. It's a tree with like multicolors from a painting that you had seen. And was it what was the painting?
I'd wanted a tree tattoo for forever.
Mm-hmm.
But, fear. I'm going to pick the wrong thing. I'm going to do the wrong thing, not having that faith in myself. But I went to, last year? No, early this year, I'm sorry. No, it is 2020, my bad. So, last year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah. So last year there was an exhibit of Monet's late work at the Kimball Museum over in Fort Worth, here in the DFW Metroplex. And they had this painting that was from a private collection, so it would have never been in any kind of, art book or anything like that you would see. And it was a tree that Monet did late in his life. And it was totally different colors. A lot of times, anybody who's into art history nerds unite. But, most people think of his his bright, colorful work and his late work of like lily pads and stuff like that. But he actually also did a lot of really kind of deeper, darker colored willow trees. And willow trees are a symbol of grief, historically.
Yes.
And he had definitely been through some stuff in his lifetime, and they had a lot of those different trees there, including some that were, you know, in some very lucky person's living room that lent them to the museum for that exhibit that just floored me. And I thought, what am I waiting for? Like, I just need to do it. And I was kind of going through actually quite a few changes at that particular point in time. I had just started a kind of new practice for myself and my self-healing journey with a specific style of journaling called future self-journaling, where I answer like 7 questions every day to design my own future. There's like affirmation, there's gratitude, and there's, you know, it's manifesting what you want to happen in your life by putting it down on paper. And so when I met Matt, I was on day 16 of that journey. And it was like right when I first started doing it, I was like, get this tattoo. So it was like day 1 or 2, I started researching, started sending out emails, and it was just by luck that like Matt was in town. I found his work and some of his beautiful trees, beautiful work.
Thank you.
Reached out and was like, hey, so when are you going to be in Dallas? And he's like, I'm actually here right now. And so I came in for the consult, and after our consult, like, there were so many things that were like, this is the guy, just do it. And I came in.
It was my long flowing hair, and boy, it's good looks. But seriously, no.
Well, actually, you pulled out your phone and you showed these beautiful pictures that you took on a hike with your family.
Yes.
Your beautiful wife and your son, and I think your granddaughter Ava was in.
Ava,
Yeah,
we
was in the pictures.
We were camping.
And so he had these beautiful pictures, and it was like a genuine appreciation of trees that you can't really fake. If you're a tree person,
yep,
you recognize other people when they have that connection with nature, and I could see it all over your face.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then a little later in the conversation, you also showed me your one tattoo on the inside of your arm about cancer.
Yep.
And I was like,
fuck cancer.
Fuck cancer, for sure. And I was like, no, this is the guy. We're doing this. And I think I came back, was it like 2 days later after the consult?
Yep.
And I couldn't be happier with the results. I mean, we're doing a second pass to add more color because the skin can only take so much in one sitting, but...
This is true. Your skin can only take so much before it's like, okay, what are we doing? Like make up your mind, because this is shitty. And yeah, I didn't want you to go through that and feel crappy the whole night, even though you later told me that you felt crappy.
I did.
Yes.
Follow your tattoo artist's instructions. If he says to eat, eat.
It's one of those things.
They're the
for
boss.
a reason.
Yep.
So, I want to back it up just a little bit. You know, with our session when we were talking about, you know, because like when I do consultations, or as a lot of people like to call them, Mattsultations, because anybody that knows me knows that I like to talk. And so my consultations will take a little bit longer than normal, which isn't a bad thing, because I like to vibe with my client. And I'm always saying, you have to vibe with your client, excuse me, or your client has to vibe with you, because then you're going to get exactly what, there's no, I'm not thinking like, oh, what if she likes this? What if she doesn't like that? What if she, wants this? Because I already know. We discussed it. We went through everything, and I got to know you, but I heard your story about, overcoming all that adversity that you had gone through at such an early age. And it really, resonated with me, because I know I mentioned a few things, but it wasn't like your ability to overcome the amount of grief and tragedy that happened,
Yeah.
it to me was like, oh my, instant connection. Like
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I want to help.
Yeah.
And I think that tattoos do have a way of helping. They're healing. They have I say they have healing properties all the time.
I think one of the things that I've learned between watching the episodes of Beyond the Ink and hearing others share, as well as my own experience,
Mm-hmm.
is that so much of life can be so, excuse me, but fucking shitty.
Yeah.
And you have no control over any of it, right? You have zero control over if, in terms of cancer, of watching someone suffer, and you're
Yeah.
just helpless. And so you're bearing witness to this pain that there's nothing you can do about it. But when
Yeah.
you're getting a tattoo, there's pain, but you're in control.
Mm-hmm.
It has a purpose. In the end of the day, that pain turns into something so beautiful, and it stays with you. The beauty stays with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to like the loss.
But the memories are there.
Right.
Like it's embedded in this art.
Yeah. So
You know?
it's like a really cool way of taking your power back, of being able to say, you know what, I can't control everything, but I can control what I'm going to do and how I'm going to feel and how I'm going to respond and how I'm going to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what this tree is for me, because actually when I came in, it was your idea to make it the tree.
The tree.
The tree.
Well,
I didn't even think that was possible. Because I just came in saying, I want a watercolored tree. That was like my base thing. And,
Yeah.
And you started asking me questions like, okay, well, tell me a little bit about what's going on in your life right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I said, I'm getting married. Getting married this April. And I was like, we're actually getting married under a tree. And you're like, really? That's pretty cool.
Under a willow tree.
Well, it's actually an oak tree.
Oh, it's an oak. That's
oak
right.
tree.
It's an oak. That's right.
But I was like, yeah, we're actually getting married under this big, huge, massive tree. And you're like, really? And I pull out a picture, you're like, oh, that would be a cool tattoo. And
Yeah.
so that...
I was like, let's use this one.
Because I was just like willing to just go with a tree. I just knew I needed a tree on me to ground me.
I needed the tree.
The tree.
The tree.
The tree. And so you came back with this super cool design with like the branches like very clearly, distinctly like the tree that we're getting married under, me and my fiance Mark, and it really like just tied everything together for me and my particular journey right now of like there's so much to look forward to. Like
Absolutely.
I can still carry the past with me, but the future is bright.
Yes.
And it grounds me that moving forward that I have things to look forward to.
Yeah, beautiful things.
Beautiful things.
Like you can find, you said, beauty within that tragedy and within what we think is that pain and we think is that just not, the darkness, that tunnel that you're in and you're just like, God, I'm consumed by it just seems like that never-ending darkness where you're just kind of like,
how do I get out? A lot of times it's in the stillness of nature that I find any peace whatsoever, which was why I knew a tree was what I needed. For the times where I can't even bring myself to go outside. When I'm like, because you have that argument with yourself where you're like, I know this will make me feel better, but I don't want to do it.
yeah.
I've got beautiful trees that I could just walk outside and go visit, but that involves getting off the couch. So I'm like, well, I'll have a tree with me on the couch for those days.
For those days where I'm just like,
For those days when I can't pep talk myself out of it. Because it happens. Not every day is the best day, but you've got to just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
I used to say this all the time. It's super cliche. I used to say every day above ground is a great day until I stopped believing that. And I was like, when did I stop believing that? When did I stop, thinking that way and really truly believing that? So, yeah, it was kind of kind of a weird situation, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you just don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want to stay locked in your comfort zone, you know? And, but you can't. You have to get up and you have to persevere. You know, you have to.
Life keeps moving whether you want it to or not.
Exactly. I learned that too a lot. And, you know, but I digress. So how did you meet Mark? I mean, how was...
We definitely are untraditional. So my fiance Mark and I, we met online. That's a cliche, but we met online in an online cancer spouse forum. So Mark and I were both married to spouses who had cancer, and you know, if you're under 18, there's a lot of great resources for pediatric cancer. And then, you know, most of the time, people are, at least in their 50s or older, so there's kind of this, like, void almost of people between, like, 20 and 50 when you're dealing with cancer. Like, well, how do you get through every day when you're balancing, you know, working or going to school, or if you've got kids and all the fun joys of dealing with cancer. And so it's unfortunately no longer, but there was this forum called Young Cancer Spouses. And, you know, my late husband, Patrick, he had an inoperable brain tumor that we, you know, I mean, he did the core of the fighting. I was the main support, but we were on that journey for quite some time. And in his last year before he passed, you know, we were on our, I think, 4th chemo at the time. It was 3 years into chemo. It was 8th year of struggle. And I just felt like I needed some support. I needed something, because trying to figure it all out on my own was hard.
Yeah.
So I found this forum.
To say the least.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I basically jumped into being the primary caregiver to a cancer patient at 18.
Because you knew Patrick...
Patrick was my high school sweetheart.
Yeah, that was the guy.
That was the guy. He, you know, he actually had his cancer before I met him, but he was in a period of remission. He'd done a ton of radiation, and his tumor had stabilized. And when I met him, you know, it's not like, you know, you meet somebody on the street and you're like, hey, by the way, do you have cancer?
By the way, I have a brain tumor.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It doesn't always come up right away. And you know how love is. I mean, love is love. And so, you know, it's like, oh, by the way, I have a brain tumor. Like, oh, shit, that's a bummer, but you're pretty awesome. So
yeah.
Before you knew it, we were a thing. But so by 2009, I was tired. I was really tired, and we were having some complications and stuff where I needed a place to even ask questions and to feel a little less alone. And so I found the forum, and there were some just incredible stories out there, because, you know, you always feel like you're the only person struggling, and then you start to hear other people share, just like with Beyond the Ink. And you're reminded of, like, holy crap, I'm not alone. There's so many other people in this suck with me.
Yeah.
And Mark was one of those people. His story just, like, jumped off the page and touched my heart. I can still remember sitting in my desk at work on my lunch break, eating at my desk and reading his story and just being, like, blown away. Because his wife actually had 4 different kinds of cancers in their marriage.
Wow.
So it was like, and he was a Navy corpsman, so he had a medical background, and I had used to work in a animal hospital, so I had a little bit of a medical background, so like there were parallels to his story that off the bat was just like, wow, this guy's fascinating.
Yeah.
But so after Patrick passed, I sent a message out to, like, I don't know, maybe like 8 people who their stories had just touched my heart so deeply that I was like, you know, I'm obviously not going to keep logging into the boards
You're
now
like,
that Patrick passed, but I wanted
I'm
to
gonna
send,
go now.
yeah, I wanted to, you know, instead of just like ghosting,
Yeah.
like for this handful of people, I want to wish them good luck.
Yeah.
And so I sent a message to Mark, and I actually sent the message to Mark the night before his wife passed. So
Oh,
he
wow.
responded about 2 weeks later, and he was like, my wife also just passed, and I'll also be leaving the boards. Now, I was still living in Chicago at the time, because I'm born and raised south side of Chicago. And Mark is a, you know, born and raised Texan. And so we just started kind of exchanging emails, and then we started talking on the phone a little bit, because we both were kind of at this fresh spot of grief where we were kind of navigating stuff that it was nice to have someone else to talk to go like, hey, am I losing my mind? Is this normal?
Do you wake up feeling like this?
Yeah.
Because I do.
And that friendship just kind of grew, and here I am 10 years later. I eventually...
Because I remember you saying, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I remember you saying, I'm not getting married. I'm not gonna do it.
Neither of us.
Yeah, you guys both said, I'll
No.
never get married again.
Yeah, we both were pretty... I mean, that loss was so profound. It was like, why in the world would I ever sign up for that again? Are you kidding me?
It makes sense. It makes sense.
That's crazy town.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I don't know, we were together for like 5 years, and he popped the question. And when I say it was the biggest surprise of my life, like,
It's an understatement.
super well, I just stood there silently for a little bit. Like, I'm usually the person that always has an answer for everything. I'm a
The
planner.
answer was no.
Well,
No,
for
I'm
me,
just
it was
kidding.
just the answer was like,
Oh,
wait,
shit.
holy crap, this is happening. Like, by the time my brain caught up, he's like, you're not saying anything. And I'm like, you know, just like awkwardly standing there.
Yeah. So did he get on one knee? Did he do like the whole?
Well, we actually, he did it the first night that we were in Rome. So I'd never been to Europe. And he was like, let's take a trip to Europe. I'm like, well, shit, okay, that sounds amazing.
So he had it.
He had this planned like so far in advance, but he never let on. Nothing. So that first
That's awesome.
night, he was actually gonna do it at the Pantheon.
Mm-hmm.
But around that area around the Pantheon, there's a lot of like begging, and it was very, very crowded, and he felt like it kind of had it was a little bit smelly. So he was like,
Just wasn't the right
time.
Or the right vibe there. Yeah.
Well, because he was like, well, I was going to do it at the Pantheon because you know that's never going to change. Like, you never have to worry about it being turned into a Burger King or anything.
Remember when we got married here at the Burger King? Or proposed?
Yeah.
That'd be funny. That would be...
Well, because that happens, right? You go
It
to
does.
dinner at a nice place, and then years later, it's like, and now it's a KFC or whatever. So he's like, oh, man, it was going to be timeless. He's like, but, it wasn't the right moment. And so he waited until we got back to our, like, hotel.
Yeah.
After our first day, and we just kind of, like, sitting and relaxing out on there was, like, a patio.
Mm-hmm.
And he got down on one knee, and, like, he got down on the knee, and I kind of was like, what is he doing?
Didn't really hit you. Like...
No, and then he said it, and it was like my brain still was like, no, this is happening. And so I just silently was like, and of course I said yes. But technically that was 5 years ago. We still, we're like, we've done this once, we're not rushing.
Yeah, I remember you were saying, because you just at the house.
Yeah.
Right? You had and you guys are embarking on this huge fixer-upper. You've got a lot of stuff going on, and then you're like, and you're gonna drop this on me like right now, but that's like...
Because we bought this fixer-upper is an understatement. We bought this house.
You're all money.
The bank said it was uninhabitable.
Oh,
We've
wow.
been working on it for 7 years, and we were kind of at a phase where it was, it still needed work. Mm-hmm. But I also had just decided to go back to get a college degree. Because, with Patrick, we met, we were high school sweethearts. I went to community college, and I thought I was going to go and get like a full associate's degree, but his condition, the way that it was at that moment, I really needed to be the breadwinner for our family.
Yeah.
And I was cool with that.
Yeah.
But so I did some like career certifications. I got certified as a receptionist, certified in like some administrative stuff, and I just went to work.
Mm-hmm.
And between work and chemo, I tried going to school as well, but it just was something had to give, you know. It was too hard to juggle it all, so I put school off. And so it was the semester, it was like that year when Mark proposed that I was like, you know what, I'm going to go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and signed up at the local community college, and I was like, you know, I hadn't been in a classroom for 8 years, so I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. So I just signed up for like one class, because I was like, man, if I fail out of a full load, I'm really going to embarrass myself.
You're like, I'm not going to recover from that.
Yeah. And so I went back to school, and I don't know, should I sidetrack for a second about the school part?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the story. It's
part of the story.
It's part of your story,
Yeah.
you know?
But so I finished up my associate's degree at the community college, and I was that person who I did it with a 4.0. I was in the honor society. I was doing like the internships. I was doing like all the stuff that they tell you to do.
All the extracurricular.
All the extracurriculars.
Yep.
And yeah, I was doing it for myself, and then came time to finish the 2-year part. I was like, cool. Well, I'm gonna work really hard because I wanted to be independent when I did it. I didn't want to rely on Mark was working, but I didn't want him to pay for my schooling.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, man, if I can get scholarships to finish out my 4-year, that'd be awesome. And I didn't have super big aspirations. I just wanted to get a bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I finished my 2-year degree, and I put in Southern Methodist University is a pretty big school here in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and they give out 10 transfer scholarships to community college students a year.
Oh, nice.
And I won one of those transfer scholarships.
Oh, wow.
So I was able to go to SMU on a completely fully paid ride. And then when I got to SMU, I decided to pedal faster. It made me a little crazy, but I pedaled really hard, and I kicked some ass. I graduated from SMU with a 4.0. I won abroad scholarships. I got to go study art history in Italy. I got to go live at a dorm in Oxford, a 400-year-old dorm, which is quite charming. The plumbing is amazing when it's 400 years old. No,
but
but
one
really,
of those little pull strings, little string toilets. Where I'm done. Those are
it was a interesting place.
to say the least.
To say the least. It was very challenging. Oxford was probably one of the hardest things I ever did.
Turn you just a little bit. Yep.
While I was there, I had a tooth die, which anyone who's ever had a tooth die slowly is a very painful thing. And I'll backtrack in a minute, but I've got like a tooth thing. Teeth are kind of like my kryptonite. So getting through Oxford and keeping my 4.0 was like the ultimate test. And because I was, however many thousands of miles away across the pond, I had no support system immediately around me. Like I couldn't lean on mom or dad or brother or Mark or anybody.
Yeah.
It was me. And to get through that on my own really was empowering, but also really challenging. But so I finished.
God, I hate tooth pain. Oh. No. I'd rather be kicked square on in the, than deal with mouth pain like that.
Because there's nothing you can do.
No, and it hurts your soul.
It does.
It's
nerve pain. It's like that crushing.
Oh, yeah.
I went to like a dentist in Oxford, and they were like, yeah, you've got like a sinus infection. You'll be fine. They gave me some like antibiotics or whatever. It was not.
Oh, wow.
I got back, and within a week of being back, I had a full root canal. And the guy was like, "Yeah, no, your tooth was dying. It was never going to get better. I'm so sorry. I wish you'd called me because I know people in England that
Oh,
I could have
damn.
referred you to." So it was pretty brutal.
Ouch.
But I got through it. I graduated from SMU with my 4.0. I won. So I was a history major, and the history department has like 3 major awards, and I won 2 out of 3.
Very
So
cool.
I did pretty good. My junior thesis was considered like the award for like the best thesis.
What did you write it on?
I actually wrote it on the Irish famine. So I was really interested, based on my own personal journey, in the concept of transgenerational trauma. And so I really wanted to dig deeper as someone of Irish heritage to understand, what happened. And so I did quite a bit of research. Now, most people, if the Irish famine is something you're interested in, didn't actually die of starving to death. They died of disease because of the weakened immune system by not having enough food.
Nourishment.
So most of them died of typhus, the type of fever that spread through lice. And so what happened was they would bring the poorest people together at these work camps where lice would spread, and then the fevers would spread. So in gathering the people together in these work camps, where essentially people were forced to work for little tiny bits of food, like sometimes just breaking rocks. It was like total menial labor. It was awful.
Oh, wow.
That they were like epicenters of disease. And when I did my own genealogy, I'd trace back, like on 3 different sides of my family, people came over because of the famine. And I actually found one of the like kind of epicenters where these work camps were. They were around, the island, but my family lived in one of the towns where those work camps were. So they would have seen the devastation daily and been a part of that. So it was empowering for me to be able to do the research to find a positive, because in my research, I found this, I identified through looking through parliamentary records that there was a network of Irish and English doctors who were basically lobbying Parliament, asking for specific changes in funding to be able to improve the conditions for the poor. And I mean, Parliament didn't listen, obviously. That's why, over 1 million people died. But to know, call me cliche, I'm going to quote Mr. Rogers, but you always got to look for the helpers. You got to look for the positive. And there were people, they were trying. They were giving their all. And so that was what my research identified, was the way that these doctors were trying to network in, 1860. So it wasn't exactly Twitter. It's a little more challenging.
Yeah.
But they were working to try and make a difference. And, as shitty as life can get sometimes, you've always got to look for those people working to make a difference. Because they're there. They're behind the scenes.
But you just don't see them because you're so, like, sometimes just, you've got your blinders on and, someone's out there, someone's got that, like for you, it was Mark, and Mark was there. Mark was like, hey, let me help you. You can help me, I help you. It's kind of like you guys, your paths
or like what you're doing with Beyond Inc. It's like, it's a tattoo parlor.
And now you guys are on a path together. And I think that happens. I think that happens a lot, but we're stubborn as, human beings, and society will say, oh, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. There's, like you said, conventional ways of doing things, and there's non-conventional ways of doing things. I happen to listen to my gut, you know, and...
Oh, well, when I was moving down here, my family, talk about unconventional, they were like, so I packed up my car with just, literally, I've got a 2008 Hyundai Elantra. It's not a big car. I packed it to the brim, and I said, I'm going to go down to Texas, and this friend, because we were friends at that point, he had a house, and after Patrick died, sorry, backtrack 2 seconds.
Tangent.
My life was like a bad country song because I lost my husband, and then within 5 weeks, our cat also died of cancer, and it was not good. And then I lost my job because 2009, the recession.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I was in a pretty bad place, and Mark invited me down for a visit, and the sun was shining here. DFW wasn't nearly hit by the recession in the same way. So there was, people were in a great mood here. Like, I remember joking with him and being like, why is everybody so happy here? Like,
Why are Texans so happy?
yeah, you guys are so upbeat. It's kind of creeping me out.
So, you're in school. You write your thesis. You get top honors for your thesis. And were you already talking? You and Mark were kind of dating, I guess you could say, or for lack of better terms, you were.
So when I was in school, Mark was he was my everything. He was my copy editor. He was my.
Oh,
he
nice.
helped keep me sane. He helped a lot because as a high school dropout from Chicago Public Schools, being thrown into the mix with, Southern Methodist University is kind of known for having kids that were from more affluent backgrounds that went to boarding schools, and I definitely felt like a fish out of water.
Okay.
As an older returning student, I had a few things going for me in that, I just had more time to practice before going back, but Mark was really great at sometimes being able to harness me in and help me with grammar things that I wouldn't have caught on my own.
Yeah. So he was your like you said your proofread.
Yeah, he was my copy editor.
That's
I would make
cool.
the sandwiches while he would review my best attempt and go, okay, so I like this, but this is you got. I'm gonna throw out there for Mark. There's a dangling modifier here. I'd be like, I don't even know what that means. Can you break it down for those of us who are grammatically challenged? But so no, he was awesome. And the whole time, right, while we were in school, if we weren't doing something for the house, it was talking about what we were going to do for the house, because it's been an ongoing thing for the last 7 years. Mm-hmm. And we're actually in, like, the final phase of our renovations right now.
But, just like any renovation, it's behind schedule.
Yes. We thought we would be moving in on Thursday, but we're probably going to be living in a hotel for another 3 weeks.
Which is crazy.
I'm going to take it, though, because when this is done, like, it's done. And compared to when we bought it, like, I need to work on my patience.
And I remember you saying, oh, yeah. They said it was uninhabitable, and I'm like, "What the hell? Like,
yeah,
why would you take that on?"
We couldn't actually do when you buy a house, right? You do it with like a standard mortgage versus like when you buy a car, it's a different structure of a loan.
Yeah.
The bank, we had to buy it under a different structure of a loan because they were like, "This house is so bad, like we don't understand why you want it," because it was in really rough shape. I joke that we got about $10,000 in equity just when we ripped the carpets out because it helped with the odor so much.
Oh.
It was the people that owned it, there's a father and 3 sons were living there. Mm-hmm. There was a divorce, and she went to go live with the preacher and left the boys behind with their dad to finish out high school.
What now?
But they all smoked in the house, and
no.
they just trashed it for like 5 years straight. So by the time we got there, I mean, it smelled pretty ripe.
Ew.
But it's a beautiful, beautiful, I mean...
Well, because it's got some amazing trees.
Yeah, that's literally the reason we bought it, actually, was because there were these 2 ginormous, beautiful trees out front that I'm like, I can rebuild a house, but I can't build a tree. So we can just gut it. That's cool. And thankfully, Mark,
was on
trusted
board.
me and said, okay, sure, let's do this. I know there were times where he probably was like, wow, this was her idea. This was a bad idea.
He was probably like, damn it, what did I get myself into?
For sure. Yeah, after like the 5th trip to Home Depot that week, yeah. He's like, but I know when it's done, it's going to be...
A home.
Yeah. It's our forever home. We joke
Yeah.
about we're going to be buried in the backyard.
Under one of those big ass trees.
Yep.
That's funny. So now that you're done with college, right? You're done with school. You're done with.
I graduated in last May, or not last May, sorry, we're in 2020. So I
Yeah.
graduated May of 2018, and then I worked at the school. I worked in the archives at the library for a little while, because that was kind of my jam, was library science. I was thinking I was going to go for a master's and continue my academic career. But during my time while I was in school, I was really hurting myself. I was suffering. On the outside, I know, to my friends and family that are probably going to watch this, you know, it looked like I had it all, that it was so perfect. But behind the scenes, I was miserable. I was having night terrors. I cracked several of my own teeth, actually, from clenching my jaw so hard from the stress.
Now, was that stress from school? Was it stress from just?
A little bit of everything. So, like, this is potentially a controversial topic, but so when you hear about PTSD, people don't typically crack and start really hurting and suffering while they're still in a war zone, right? It's when you get home and when things are safe that you crack, and all of a sudden everything falls apart, right? That's what you see typically when you deal with, like, veterans with combat-related PTSD. In the civilian world, it's a little more blurry. So for me, when I won SMU, and, like, shortly after I got there, I started to crack because I knew that I was going to be safe, that I'd always be employable, that I was going to have a really good college degree from an incredible university that was well respected.
Yeah.
And that I wasn't going to have to, you know,
Really try hard to.
I wasn't going to be cleaning dog kennels the rest of my life for below minimum wage, getting paid under the table. Nobody was sick.
Yeah.
You know, after years of being the primary caregiver where, you know, you have someone who's literally dying depending on you to put bread on the table, to know not only do I not have necessarily anyone depending on me in that way, but I have all of the resources that I need to take care of myself and someone else if they were to get sick.
Yeah.
That sense of safety was my coming home, and I cracked. And I really started to suffer. I had a couple trips to the ER. I one day just completely lost consciousness, blacked out, had to ride in an ambulance to the hospital because, you know, you hit the floor and you black out. It's good to figure out why, and they didn't really have an explanation. And it was Mark, as a retired Navy corpsman, who came to me and was like, you know, I kind of wonder if maybe some of the different struggles that you're having are PTSD.
Yeah.
And he, you know, brought me some literature from anyone who is struggling. I highly recommend checking out Pete Walker or Peter Levine or Dr. Nicole Pera. She's at the Holistic Psychologist on Instagram. All really great resources to help you understand if you feel like you've had severe trauma in your life and there are things that maybe you can't quite put your finger on how something's affecting you.
Or why.
All great sources of information that have helped me to be able to better understand myself. So.
And I think what I'll do is I'll put a link below of, like, some Instagram things that you can take a look as well, in case you don't have to rewind and, you know.
Yeah.
And just do all that. I'm old, so, you know, hey, I'll rewind shit, whatever. But yeah, we'll put links down below.
Yeah.
Give you an idea.
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like it is kind of a buzzword right now in society. You hear people talk about triggered or about PTSD, and unfortunately, while we're working to end the stigma about it, it also creates kind of a blurry line of, like, oh, well, is that really PTSD?
Is it a military thing?
Is it only a
a
military
everyday
thing?
thing?
Yeah.
No?
And there's times even I struggle with, like, I feel like I almost have to qualify it, which I'm happy to. And I'm sure Matt, after reading all my jazz, would be like, no, I think that sounds legit.
I'd say what you've gone through, with such a great, and I say great as in enormous loss. And again, you were what, 22? Or
So I was 24 when
24.
Patrick died. But Patrick was actually the third really close family member that I'd lost to battles with cancer. My first real loss wasn't cancer related at all. My biological dad died when I was 4 months old, and
wow.
left me and my mom not in the greatest of situations.
Now that was in Chicago? Or
Yeah, yeah. So my birth dad was a Chicago police officer, and a lot of police officers struggle with alcoholism and addiction, and he was no different. And he had a massive heart attack at 30, and I know that a major contributing factor to that was alcoholism. And so my mom and I were, she was 26, I was 4 months old, and we were on our own. And it was rough, and I'm not gonna lie. Thankfully, my mom's mom, my Nana, she stepped in, and she was a huge, really positive influence in my life. She was like a second mom in a way.
Yeah.
She was a really big part of my life. Well, when I was 11, she died of cancer, and she'd had a pretty gruesome battle, and my mom and I, lived with her the last couple months, so it was really up front and center.
You were already
Oh
traumatized
yeah, I watched her fall into a coma when I was 11. So the silver lining of that was that it trained me, because I literally from such a young age had training in what are the kinds of questions you ask when you go to an oncology appointment.
Yeah.
What are the kinds of reminders that you need to make sure that you don't screw up on a medication schedule? All those things kind of came into play with Patrick.
Yeah.
And then, aside from my Nana, tragedy struck our family again. My cousin, who I was extremely close with because she was the only child I ever knew that had a close relationship with my birth father. She was about 7 years older than me. She, at the age of 19, died of cancer. A short battle with osteogenic sarcoma, a form of a bone cancer.
Oh, Jesus.
So our family had endured a lot. So when I met Patrick, he's like, by the way, I have cancer. And I know he expected me to run.
True.
Just like a lot of people had when he would tell them. But I was like, okay, well, what kind? Instead I responded with a variety of questions. Like, what stage?
Yeah.
What other 18-year-old person do you know that would, respond with those kinds of questions? So,
True.
I could view it as like, oh God, why me again? But I could also view it as like, well, it should have been me, because I was equipped. You
knew.
I was able to handle it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I don't know very many 19-year-olds who are like, okay, it's time for me to go off and be the supporter and coordinate how we're gonna get to chemo. Like, okay, let's do it. And we did it, and we did. We had a great life together, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity that I had to be there with him while he fought.
Be there for him.
To be there for him, yeah. I mean, I wish I could have given him more than what I gave him. I gave him my best.
But there's always that not selfish, meaning it's that, you can call it survivor's guilt. You can call it, there's so many different names for it. But when we're selfish by nature, we want every minute with that person. We want one more minute with that person. We want, it's just, sometimes you can have that if you're lucky, and sometimes you just can't. And then you get pissed off, and we don't want to accept it, and that's that whole roller coaster. And
it is a roller coaster.
They're like, oh, it's 5 stages of grief. 5 what? 5 times 1,000? Like, what are you talking about? 5, you
Well,
know?
and as soon as you think you're done with a stage, it's like, by the way.
Yeah, there's
Not really.
fine print that you have to read to, and you don't really get over it. Like, you never
No.
will get over, something. And yeah.
It's not about even, because people will say like, oh, well, it'll get better. It's not that it really changes. It's just that the longer you live with it, the more techniques you find to be able to carry it with you. It doesn't feel as heavy because, it's just like going to the gym, right? You build up like that strength to be able to say, you know what, this hurts and it sucks, but it's mine to carry, and I'm going to keep carrying it. And you just get better leverage on it over time. It's not that it really gets better, per se.
It's almost like you get that callus, and you build it, and you build that callus that is like, I don't feel it anymore. I'm okay. Like, getting tattooed. First 20 minutes suck, and then you kind of get used to it.
And you're like, oh, hey, there's that needle in my skin, but...
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. No,
No, I always find it interesting when, like, people are like, so, like, when are you going to move on? It's like, well, it's not that you move on, it's that you have to keep moving forward because life forces you to, but, you do have a choice in how much you let it affect your day-to-day on how you choose to frame it. And so that's why I've really tried to focus on the gratitude of, like, how lucky am I
to meet Matt Valdez? No, I'm kidding. No.
I am, though. But how lucky am I to be on, like, a journey? Because, like, if I hadn't unfortunately lost Pat, I wouldn't have met Mark. If I hadn't met Mark, I wouldn't have come to Texas. If I hadn't come to Texas, I wouldn't have met you.
Correct.
I refrain from saying everything happens for a reason because I feel like that's kind of a cop-out, but I choose to focus on gratitude for all the good.
Now, when did you learn that, I mean, as far as these gratitude and self,
So, so I think we were talking earlier that I finished school, and that's when I was going to go for my master's. I had really big ambitions academically, and I had a lot of the resources that I could have done it, but my health was really in the shitter. I have autoimmune thyroid disease that I've struggled with for a really long time, and it was totally out of control. I was having all these different symptoms, and I looked in the mirror and I was like, as long as I'm pursuing these academic goals, I'm going to put myself last. I'm going to just keep, quote unquote, pushing through it, which means hurting myself.
Yep.
So I walked away from my academic career, and I walked into Al-Anon. I joined Al-Anon because I understood that I needed to heal from the loss of my father. When you lose someone when you're an adult, I'm not saying it's harder or easier, it's just different. When you're 4 months old, grief is always there, but it doesn't mean that it's processed. And I think what happened for me was that a lot of grief got literally trapped in my body, which is a thing. It's a thing that trauma can store itself in your body, which is part of the work of like people like Peter Levine and Bessel van der Kolk with Body Keeps the Score is a great resource that we can link to too.
I think too, when you're that young and you don't know what you're supposed to have, so you start to see, the people around you have a dad, the kids at school have a dad, and you're just like, well, shit, why don't I have a dad? And that triggers even more thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
And that makes you go down those rabbit holes of, like, you don't know what alcoholism as a young child, and I'm sure your mom was probably like, hey, we don't want to talk about that as much. Like, it's not a dinner time conversation that you...
Well, and nobody really does, which was one of the things that I thought was fascinating when I met you, that we earlier were saying, you were kind of reserved. Well, because Matt would ask me a question, and I'm like, nobody really wants to hear about this stuff, right? Like, when you're out somewhere and someone says, oh, how did you meet your spouse? And I go, we met on a Cancer Spouse forum. 9 times out of 10, there's a look of complete horror of, oh God, how
shit.
long is this conversation going to last?
Yes. Or what did I ask? Why did I ask that question?
Yeah.
And damn, there's going to be a long answer. And you know what? Fuck them if they can't take it.
Yeah.
If they can't, you know. So, Al-Anon. Again, in your letter, I was under the impression that it was something that, you know, again, maybe I misunderstood or didn't comprehend it as much as I thought I did, by thinking that you were the one that was struggling with almost, I want to say substance abuse, but it was like, oh, Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, you hear.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe what I made that correlation. But what is the difference, and what is?
So, Al-Anon is really for anyone who has a loved one that has alcoholism or addiction, and because, right, alcoholism, even if you're not the one drinking, you're still affected by it.
Yes.
It's trying to give people the tools to be able to heal from those effects so that you can find peace and serenity for yourself, whether the person you love is drinking or not. So, it's kind of learning to focus on yourself and not get mixed up in trying to fix an alcoholic, because you can't. You can't control their drinking. You're not the reason that they drink, because ultimately, whatever we do, we're not doing it because of someone else. We're doing it because of ourselves, right?
How did you walk through those doors? I mean, what made you say, "Hey, I'm gonna go," and why? Yeah, what was the?
I knew that something was so wrong. I was hurting so bad, and I really had run out of ideas of how to fix it on my own.
Okay.
And so I felt so alone. Like, I was like, oh God, I'm the only person hurting. And I reached out to a friend, because while I was in school, you know, I'd go and I'd talk to my doctor and say, you know, like, oh, I'm struggling, and they'd give me prescriptions.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other dangerous wormhole.
Which I can't stand. Here, take this pill. There you go. Done. That's just, why? You know, there's so many other natural ways you can handle, you know. Stress, yeah.
Oh, no. I mean, there was a point in time where I was on 15 pills a day.
Jesus.
And I was about 75 pounds heavier. And a large part of that was because of the prescription medication, because no one wanted to talk about the root of the problems. They wanted to give me something to help
They just want to
cover the symptoms.
Yeah, a little Band-Aid on it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was labeled with depression, with anxiety, with mood disorder, which, yeah, you're going to be moody if
yeah, if you're overweight, if you're, you know, not happy with yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody was, like, giving me tools on, like, how do I just work on fixing me instead of filling a pill keeper. And I knew that pills weren't going to fix it. I knew that pushing myself and ignoring what I was feeling wasn't going to fix it. So I went to Al-Anon. And I also went and I found a trauma specialist, too. And I did cognitive behavioral therapy, which is basically trying to get to the root of your thinking process to find, like, a core belief that you need to change. So, like, an example of a core belief might be the idea that I'm not lovable. And then working on coaching yourself and recognizing in your thought patterns, okay, but I am lovable, so why am I jumping to... So it's like breaking down your thoughts and retraining yourself to be more positive.
Okay.
Or to challenge a negative belief, like I'm not worthy of respect, or I'm
not good enough.
I'm not good enough, etc. And so I did that for a while, and then I also did EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, where you go and it's pretty grueling. You go and you talk about all of the absolute worst moments of your life. You start with, like, the 10, which is the absolute worst, then you go to the 9s, then you go to the 8s. Like, it's rough. And while you're verbally talking about it and thinking about it, you're listening to a series of beeps and watching flashing lights and holding sensors in your hands that vibrate. And essentially in bringing your trauma to the surface, these other things that are in tandem going on while you're doing it allows you to free its grip on you of where you have it stored before, because what can happen is when you're going through trauma, things can get stored in the wrong place, and that's why you feel like you can never get past it, because it's literally stuck somewhere that it's not supposed to be. So the idea of EMDR therapy is it allows you to free it from where it's trapped and put it back in its rightful place so that it doesn't affect your day-to-day life in ways that are unintended.
Okay.
And so I did the CBT, I did the EMDR, and then I knew that long term, right, like I wasn't going to look at flashing lights forever. That's not sustainable. And so I turned, ironically, to Instagram, and I found, as I mentioned before, at the holistic psychologist and her concept of future self-journaling. And I started to, I also found aerials. I found an aerial studio, and by aerials I mean pole, which I know, also a taboo thing, and silk, so like Cirque du Soleil. So it's like a gym, but with silks and pole, and some really incredible teachers. And I really upped my fitness game, because, I'd already lost, by the time I found aerials, about 70 pounds, but
That's great.
I was kind of tired of going to the gym, and I picked things up, I put them down. It wasn't that exciting and motivating for me. But aerials is something I love, and in the physical work that I'm doing, I'm continuing to set free some of the trauma and releasing some of that grief, because it's in the physical action of using your body that you're able to process things that you can't just by sitting on a couch and thinking about them. Because, like, by all means, talk therapy is really valuable, but there are some things that maybe you can't put words to heal, that words aren't required for the healing. It's the moving or the time in nature. And
I've seen, didn't mean to cut you off, but I've seen your aerials videos and everything, and the progression is the one thing that's pretty cool, because you're like, I remember when you said, oh, I'm doing these what do you call them, the silk things where you're like hanging upside down, and I thought it was aerial yoga.
I was doing just the yoga at first, because I wasn't strong enough to do the drops.
But you could see that, and not to say, I'm not downing or anything or saying anything bad, but you could see that, like, oh, you weren't strong enough to get up there, and you were like, you was almost labored, and then after that it was like, okay, you got that down. It was getting easier, and then you started doing the, what do you call it, hammock?
Hammock.
Yeah, so the two, you're flipping upside down, you're wrapping your legs into the silk,
doing drops.
Yeah, doing drops, and I'm like, that's so cool, man. That's like, proud. I was almost like, damn, I'm really proud of you for the progression, and you can see, but the one thing that was very apparent was your smile. You would smile like after everything, and it was just like, yeah, I did it. That to me that's great, because it shows, again, progress. It shows commitment, and it also shows that you're just moving forward. You are getting past a lot of the things that are these difficult hurdles, and like you said, the traumas that are bothering you and that are really kicking your butt.
Fighting back.
Yeah. I mean,
That's all we can do, you know, is find these different things that work. Maybe in 10 years, aerials won't work for me anymore. Maybe I'll have to go look at flashing lights again. But
maybe you have to go to hit the range. You have
Yeah.
to do something, you know.
I'll have to come back and see you sit in the chair.
Some more ink therapy, you know,
Yeah.
getting that piece that's going to be, yeah. And who knows? I mean, we're always evolving. We're always getting better. We're always doing stuff that, you know, again, I had thought about doing Beyond the Ink and for almost 2 years before I actually pulled the trigger, like a year and a half before I actually pulled the trigger. And it was my partner, Austin, who, you know, we're talking 20 some odd year age difference. And I was tattooing him and he was telling me, you know, a bunch of stuff. And I've said it on, you know, other episodes, but it was that push, you know, that you always need someone to give you that little nudge. And for me, if I do something, I'm like, I'm doing it full. You know, I'm not gonna, you know, I teach my sons this: don't half-ass anything, man. Full ass. Gotta go. You know, and it sounds funny, but it's like, it makes a lot of sense when, you know, when you're just putting everything into it. And I did. And I, again, like I said in the beginning of this episode, I put everything into this, and I still didn't feel that that I was doing the right thing, or I was heading in the right. I'm not an interviewer. I didn't go to school for any broadcasting. I just have a passion for art and for sharing amazing stories of perseverance leading to triumph and overcoming a lot of these things that would cripple most people, and it'll cripple you for a little bit, and I want to share that. I want to let other people know that you might be going this, you might need some of this help, you might be going through the same things. You know, again, for the longest time, I didn't talk about my own depression. I didn't talk about things that bother me. You know, I will eventually, you know, little by little, baby steps, if you will, you know. And like I said before, I used to consider myself an open book. Like, oh yeah, I could say anything, tell anybody anything. And I realized that after doing this and meeting you and meeting a lot of people, like, fuck, I'm really closed off. Like, and I know from my own past traumas that I would build a wall. I used to call myself Great Wall of China because I would build those walls and nobody could knock them down. And then when somebody would knock them down, I was like, okay, maybe I'm starting to, you know, be okay with this. And something would happen where it would trigger, you know, that little red light would go off, you know, watch out. And it was like, do, 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 do. You know,
Yeah.
like my name should have been Mason, not fucking Matt, because I can build a wall faster than like
Yeah.
anybody's, you know, but
As soon as you take them down, you're able to put them right
As soo-
back up
oh,
like in a
God,
heartbeat. It's like,
and
oh,
it's-
I know how I took those down. I
I
put
do.
those bricks down very carefully.
I do. And you know, again, I don't really want to make this, you know, about me, and this show is not about me. It's about my clients and about their perspective and their stories and why I get up in the morning to do this. And I thoroughly believe that it helps people with their traumas, you know, and I'm
does.
learning through other people, and by, again, sharing it with you fine folks, helps out as well, you know, and there's just no way around it. I mean, you know.
No, I remember when I watched that episode with Keith, and I was like, oh my God, because there were things that he said where I was like, he gets it.
Yes.
But at the same time, I was like, you know, from my side of it, I'm like, well, I've got civilian PTSD, and people don't think of that as like real PTSD. And so there was like all of my own fear where I was like, oh God, should I even write? But I came, and after I sat in your chair, it was like a week after that I wrote out my Al-Anon story because I was going to go get my 1-year chip in Al-Anon.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote this story, and I was proud because it showed a progression of like how far I'd come. And I was so grateful for the experience with you, and grateful for, you know, seeing beyond the ink, and getting to
I
have
think,
a sense of the tattoo community almost, right?
yeah,
Because like I'm going through my ink right now, and when I see other people with ink, I feel this sense of community, right?
it
And I was like,
is. It is.
hearing other people's stories gave me insight into like what it means to other people, into the tattooing community, and you embraced me with open arms. That I was like, I'm just gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna write him a letter and tell him what it meant to me and share my story. And I'm really glad that I did, because
I'm really glad that you did, because again, all 100% honesty, I was on the verge of just pulling the plug. Crazy as it sounds, and that letter was, God, it was a godsend. It was very, again, I said, okay, doesn't matter what anybody says from this point on. I'm going to continue doing this. I'm going to love what I do. I'm going to continue. And if, again, helps one person, great. Helps more than one person, even better. And right now, I've got clients that are watching this on the East Coast. I've got clients that are watching it on the West Coast and everywhere in between. I've got a client who watches it in Canada, who I'm going to go see her and tattoo her and have her on the, and that's
Cool.
what I think is cool about what I get to do. I get to travel. I get to tell some amazing stories of life, and it's from all across the, everywhere. And who knows? Maybe I'll be out in Italy again. Maybe I'll be out in, and just, from my little spot in Arizona, and then some. Like,
Yeah.
and I love it, and I won't stop doing it, and I do. I thank you for reaching out. Because most people don't, and everybody that I've told the story to, I said the thing was, and I stressed the most was, she wrote me a hand-paged letter, like it was a handwritten letter, handwritten,
Did I get to tell you a little bit about why I do handwritten?
No,
Or why I do letters?
No,
Why I do snail mail?
no.
Because, in the day and age, right, I could have just sent an email.
You could have just, yeah, absolutely.
So actually, after Pat died, and I met Mark, and we started to be a thing, Mark and I navigated over to widow forums, because that's also another forum community. And I made friends with widows all over the country, all over the world.
That's awesome.
And something that you might not think about, but if you've lost someone, then you can relate, is after your spouse or someone you love dies, mail keeps coming. Credit card applications, junk mail,
yes.
right? And going out and checking your mail can get really depressing, where it's like, oh, cool, or, you're getting bills. Like in my case, right? Pat didn't have any life insurance, so there were bills.
Yeah.
It sucked. So, like, going out to the mailbox became this, like, horrible thing.
Yeah.
And I, after Pat died, I'm not going to say that life was easy. It was really hard. And I'm one of those people that it was a lot easier for me to try and stay upbeat and positive. Doing things for other people made me feel good. So I'm not going to say it came totally out of a selfless. Part of it was selfish because I felt good doing it.
Hey, that's
but,
fine.
I got the addresses of a lot of my widowed friends and started writing them letters so that when they would go out to check their mail, they would find something that would make their day instead of just being depressed. And the
That's
positive responses that I got from people where they were like, oh my God, like your letter came on a day where I didn't know how I was going to get through the day. I heard that enough times that I realized there was something really special to that. There's something about the physicality of someone taking the time to write out by hand that you can see, right?
Yeah.
After you've lost someone too, right? Like my most treasured things are my letters.
Yes.
The letters and cards I have from my husband, from my Nana, from a lot of people in my life, from my friends telling me, that they love me. Those words, those messages of love are more meaningful than any pair of sneakers that I own.
Yeah.
So
Because it's valuable, and it's value that there's no, monetary. That's like you can't
it's a piece of them
replace that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that lives on forever. Even after they're gone, you've still got that paper or that card or whatever.
yeah.
And so that's why I take the time to write them out and put it in the mailbox instead of an email.
I do that with my son. He's in the military, and
Yeah.
I think that even when he was at boot camp, I wrote him letters. I'm like, handwritten.
Oh.
Because I'm like, you will take these rather than if I emailed them to you or typed it up or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that form of communication, but
There's something special.
there is something special. My grandfather used to write me letters, and I used to love getting those letters. And
Yeah.
it was just like, God,
It's an art form in and of itself.
It is, because, again, like you said, someone took that time to care enough to write you that letter, just to sit down, piece of paper, write it out.
Well, and handwriting is like
It's-
a
people
brush
are-
stroke,
yeah.
right? Like everybody's got their own
Mhm.
style of writing, the way
Yep.
that they word things, the
Yep.
way, maybe they do an XO or a heart next to their signature.
Their
or
little,
whatever.
their little signature, their little nuances, and
Yeah.
just that's their flair, and you'll never forget somebody when they write you something. And
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. I think people should write more people. I know it sounds funny, but hey, it's the 20s. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Start writing again,
Roaring
man.
20s, man. Bring back
Hey,
the handwritten letter.
Bring back the handwritten letter. Bring back respect.
It can be really hard, right? Because we're animals.
Correct.
We like to think of ourselves as being like so much more evolved.
We like to
than
think of ourselves as being so significant, like
yeah. But,
in this world.
but like, bottom line, we're just animals with really complicated emotions trying to survive. And we live in this super complicated world that allows for so much isolation and complexity that is not our norm, right? Like,
Yeah.
we now live in high rises with air conditioning and can have, our groceries delivered.
Yeah.
When, the better part of human history, we had to, go out and hunt for food. So, that transition, we're in, this very new phase of humanity that's kind of like an experiment, right? Where we're all, living behind these, fancy boxes with screens, separated from each other.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily natural, but we've designed this world and we're stuck in it. But so it can get really easy to isolate yourself. So it's good to find ways, whether it's a letter or even, use the technology in a positive way, like your friend is with a text, to open up that sense of community, that sense of communication, to help break down some of that isolation. Because, scrolling on social media isn't the same thing as having a conversation one-on-one with someone.
Correct.
It's different. And when you are struggling with feelings of depression or anxiety or just struggling with life, because, hey, life's hard, having that sense of another human, another person cares about me, even if I'm struggling, is so meaningful, you know? Sometimes even just a smile, that can be the difference between a good day or a crappy day, is making eye contact with someone and really having that, genuine human connection for a minute.
Yeah, I like to at least give compliments to 10 people a day. At least 10 people, and everybody knows me. I compliment people. I will tell you, hey, you look very nice today. I will tell you, I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you have, because you don't know someone's struggle. You don't know that you might be the only person that day, in a day of just pure shit, and you made them feel great for that, a smile. How are you? How's your day? You'd be surprised how many times I've asked, the person at the gas station or one of the attendants at the the store. Why I say supermarket, but I'm old. And I'll tell them, so how's your day going? How are you today?
Yeah.
and they
The
say,
look of surprise.
well, first it's like they're looking down, and then they look up and they're like, why would you want to know? Like, because I'm curious. How's your day? Well, you have a great day. Thank you. And then they're just like, you have a great day as well,
Yeah. Well, because we get in this like mode of transactional, I feel like, occurrences where we forget, like, we're all just people. We're all just people trying to survive,
Yep.
man.
Yep.
It's a struggle. It really is.
I agree. I really do thank you for sitting down and, one, letting me tattoo this meaningful piece. I mean, this is something that you're getting married under, and I did use a lot of the tree, its major, its shape, to, it's not the tree, but it is the tree.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
my tree.
Our tree. It's your tree, yeah. And so, yeah, the our tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Mark likes to say, it's our tree. You're
Yeah.
like, well, I'm wearing it, but I'm kidding.
Yeah. No, Mark now is like, I love our tree, and I'm like, well, I think it's a little bit more mine than yours.
I have a little more ownership.
It stung me a little bit more than you, but yeah, it's our tree. It's representative of our future together, of the life that we've chosen to commit to each other in Texas. Speaks to everything that we've built so far and our dreams for the future with each other and our own continued path to healing.
I think it's great that you found each other like that. I think it's great that you connected and that you were able to not move past, because you're never going to move past, but heal with one another and being able to, the similarities and, how long he was with his wife for?
So Mark and I have an age difference. He's older than me. He and his wife were together a lot longer than me and Pat were, because he and his wife were together for about 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
shit. She had 4 different kinds of cancer. Cheryl was a badass. She had a soft tissue type reoccurring tumor in her leg.
Okay.
And eventually that spread, and she had to have a hemopelvectomy, meaning she had her entire leg removed and a big portion of her hip. So she lived with an amputated leg without her leg and part of her hip for a better portion of, let me get this right, do some math in my brain. Sorry, total liberal arts major here.
I have a needle and you're like, doing math is probably the last thing you would.
I think, I want to say it was 15 years that she didn't have her leg. So, I mean, it was a significant amount of time. And unfortunately, though, so she lost her leg. She then also had a struggle with breast cancer, so she had a double mastectomy. And then she, when they had taken her leg, they did radiation. And the radiation at the top where they took the leg eventually turned into colon cancer, which then metastasized to ovarian cancer.
Oh my
so, I mean, they had a really full plate together. And, he would say that his time, because he was a Navy corpsman, so his training in that sense was a blessing, because he was able to really be a caregiver at home that was more than your average caregiver.
Yeah.
So they went through a lot, but the cool thing about us both being widowed is that if he talks about her, there's a very strong sense of respect. I can never fully understand, because I didn't lose Cheryl, what he went through, but I have an idea, and it just makes me love and respect the person that he is, because it takes a certain kind of person to be able to go through something that lasts that long and that's that, intense.
Yeah.
But if I wasn't ever, widowed or married before, I could see how it could easily evolve into like jealousy or insecurity, but that's really not what it is. Like, we've had moments where we've been having a really great time and we've looked at each other and been like, God, I wish they would be here. they could be here with us.
Yeah.
And we both genuinely mean it. And then, of course, it evolves into a joke of, except then Pat would have to punch you in the face, and Cheryl would probably crutch me. But
That's funny.
we're able to hold space for each other, because there's times where, you know, it's still just going to hurt. It's still just, you got to feel the ick.
You do.
You got to just feel the ick for a minute, and it'll pass. So to anyone out there that's feeling the ick right now, that's fresh in your grief, it doesn't go away, but it changes. It's kind of like a wave, you know? Sometimes you're like riding high, and then sometimes it takes your breath away, and you feel like you're struggling for air, but
just crashes down on you.
yeah.
Well, I want to thank you again. I've said that I don't know how many times. Thank you for allowing me to do this, and for sitting here under the whole needles and, you know, talking about life and this your struggles and your just overcoming everything, you know, and still working through it, you know. That's what this is about. That's what this program is about. Not focusing on the negatives. It's focusing on the positives that are coming from a negative situation, you know, and by helping, you know, using a little tattoo therapy to help out and get that dialogue going. I can't thank you enough for many reasons. Again, and for you, if you guys are still with us, go ahead and comment down below. If you share it, that would be wonderful. If you smash the hell out of that subscribe button, even better. Find us on social media. Again, I'll put some links down below. If you are in need of some help, talk to somebody. There's plenty of people and professionals that, again, we'll put some links down below, and it will be worth it. You know, you don't go through this stuff alone. Yeah. So again, I'm Matt Valdez. This is Mara Pitcher. I always say Priya. So like
Pitcher.
I added an R.
I like to joke, and I'm like, depending on your mood,
it's
is
a
it
pitcher.
baseball pitcher or a margarita pitcher? Depends on your mood for the day.
That's a good way to do it. But again, thank you very much for sitting with me and letting me stab you. And I hope you love this. And I hope it looks great in the wedding pictures or the engagement photos. So
Yeah.
I was very happy. She tagged me in that.
I
which was
did.
pretty damn cool.
Did the whole like makeup and hair and then tattoo.
Tattoo by this guy. Yeah, so it was pretty cool. Yeah, so I look forward to doing more with your art and areas that we're going to work on next.
Oh,
so,
I've got goals. Yeah. I'll be back. Maybe I'll be back for another episode.
Hey, we'll do it again, you know, so that would be cool. I'm Matt Valdez from Dallas, Texas. I thank you for watching. Again, like button, share it, tell your friends. Beyond the ink. I will see you guys later. Bye.